Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and Arcaven Comics. Why you do not ever talk to the media. This is something that Stefan Molyneux has been advising for as long as I've known him. And it's a position that I did not originally espouse. Now, I've always been aware that you need to be very cautious when you're dealing with the media. I'm from the media myself originally, having been a 3-time nationally syndicated columnist with Chronicle Features and Universal Press Syndicate. So I know how the system operates. I get it. But what I hadn't really realized is how much things have changed since I was working with the newspapers back in the late 90s. And what has really changed is they have gone from being willing to twist and contort what you actually say a little bit to a point where it doesn't even matter what you do or what you say. The narrative is already written. The story has already been laid out. All they're doing now when they talk to you is getting kill quotes and getting words that they can then spin to claim that they've given you a fair shake. You see, when they contact you, what they tell you is that they want to give you your chance to tell your side of the story. And the thing is, the clear implication is already there. They're already signaling what they're going to do to you, because the other side of the story that is not your side of the story, is the narrative. The way they portray it is, well, so-and-so has said something about you, or there is this belief that X or Y or Z is true about you. What's your version of that? And what they want you to do is they want you to play defense to their prosecuting attorney. That's the whole idea. You are there to be the subject of the interrogation, and they are the stars who are prosecuting you. Now, of course, that's why they want to talk to you. They don't need you to verify any facts. They will completely ignore anything that you say if you manage somehow, miraculously, to defang and conclusively disprove an assertion that was part of their narrative. At most, what they will do is simply omit that. They will never make the false charge and then allow you to disprove it. So it's a situation where you literally cannot win, because the deck is stacked. You're in a courtroom of public opinion where the arresting officer, the judge, the prosecuting attorney, and the defense attorney are all the same person. They're all the reporter. And so and here's the other thing that you need to understand, is that it usually isn't the reporter who dictates the narrative. I did an interview, probably the last interview that I'll do with anyone from the mainstream, with a reporter who was working on a story for Rolling Stone. And she's very nice. The interview that we did was pretty reasonable. She asked about 1 or 2 mildly controversial things, and but didn't really focus on it. Most of the interview was on Castalia House. That was what it was billed as, and that's what the interview was. And that was all fine. It was all good. I thought, okay, this is, because I did my research. As a reporter who likes to go in depth, definitely has, the usual left liberal SJW perspective. But unlike most SJWs, actually tries to do a proper story. But here's the thing. After we launched Arkhaven, and after the unexpected success of the Alt Hero crowdfunding campaign, I contacted her and said, hey, here's an aspect of the story that's probably very interesting. I think that it would really be something that will make the story more interesting. Castalia House is directly involved. It's related. You can really take this somewhere. And that was fine. She was definitely interested in that. But then suddenly NPR was somehow involved. And she asked me if it was possible to do some sort of TV, radio type thing. And that's when I started to realize, okay, something has changed significantly here. And then they went and talked to Chuck Dixon. I recommended him as someone that was relevant to the project. And he said it was really bizarre because the whole thing turned into a prosecution. The whole thing turned into don't you realize that Vox is bad, and don't you realize that you're bad, and all the classic ridiculous kill quotes that they were looking for. Chuck's an old pro. He dealt with it. But after that, I just said absolutely not. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to your new friend from NPR, who, by the way, is an investigative journalist. Okay, so suddenly it goes from being, hey, this is an interesting story about a successful publishing house. Now suddenly we're being investigated by NPR. Well, to hell with that. And so, I can't do anything about the fact that I did give a interview, and I have no doubt that some of the things that I said in that interview are going to be used in this very different piece that is going to appear on NPR and what have you. But what I can do is I can stop feeding the machine. I can stop sticking my fingers into the blender. And everyone is learning this. I mean, it doesn't matter how. I mean, here's a very innocent and naive comment from Skydad. He says, "You can boost your cult underground following by looking perfectly articulate while trolling mainstream media if you don't mind being pilloried in the enemy's forum." Well, that's ridiculously stupid. It's a variant of the I'm going to cleverly succeed in doing what no one ever does. I mean, everybody thinks that the journalist that they're talking to is the nice one. Everyone thinks that they're going to, explain things their way, and they're going to be clever, and they're going to troll the media. Well, no, you're not. The only way that you can ever successfully troll the media is with live television. The Sam Hyde stuff, the Baba Booey stuff, I see OJ, because there they don't have the editors going over the stuff. And remember what I said, the narrative is not defined by the reporter. This reporter that I'm talking about would have been perfectly happy to do a nice, normal story on a successful publishing house. But that's not the story that the magazine wanted to buy. They want a story on the evil right-wing invasion of comics. That's the story they're looking for. That's why they were out interviewing people like Based Stickman. Now, I have nothing whatsoever to do with Based Stickman. I have literally never talked to him. We don't work on comics with him. Why would they talk to him? Why would they be Facebook and LinkedIn stalking people that are connected to us? It's because no one wants to talk to them now. And so, Stefan Molyneux was right. Because even someone, but this is funny, someone said, Milo pulled it off because he's a gay Jew with a black boyfriend. Milo didn't pull it off. Milo, as brilliant as he is, as quick on his feet as he is, as theoretically inoculated against SJW Inquisition as he is, due to his various identity complications, he got absolutely destroyed in the media. They kept pressing and they kept pushing, and they finally found what was a sufficiently weak link in his armor. And so, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how clever you are. It doesn't matter how quick on your feet you are, because they have the power of the editing process. It doesn't matter what you say. They can spin it, and they can make you look bad. What they love to do, for example, is they'll ask you a question. And you're having a normal conversation, and they will ask you the question, and then they'll be like, yeah, okay, yeah, great, that's a good point, keep going on. But then what they do is, when the interview's over, they'll sit there in the same chair with the same lighting, and then they'll film different reaction shots. They'll film what they reacted to before, going, yeah, okay. They'll suddenly go, I don't think that's right. They will they will completely change the tenor and the tone of the interview. And I've heard every idea. Oh, well, record it yourself. Why? So that everyone can continue to ignore your version of it. Once the initial version gets out there, then the narrative is established. The best way that you can defang them, the best way that you can troll them, is to simply not talk to them, because they need content. They need your comments. The stories that they are writing do not work without your participation. That's why they're always looking for your participation. There's nothing that they hate worse than having to put, we reached out to so-and-so, but they could not, they did not give us a comment, or they could not be reached for comment, or whatever. They still try to make you look bad. They still try to urge you. They still try to claim that, well, it looks bad if you don't talk to them. Well, it doesn't look bad if you never talk to them. It only looks bad if you talk to them sometimes, but not when they're pressing you on something. Stefan has that very clear policy. And so, sorry, there's a dog dreaming in the background. So anyhow, the important thing is, don't think that you're going to outwit them. Don't think that you're going to get around them. And don't think that the exposure is somehow going to be worth it. It's not. Mike Cernovich and I were talking about this. And he noticed that even a story in a major newspaper, the New York Times, or a big magazine, didn't bring anywhere nearly as much traffic to his site as a link from my blog or a tweet from somebody prominent. So even the supposed benefits simply don't exist. You know, the media is dying, and by depriving them of the content that they want, and they want content, they want the Richard Spencers running around dancing like a monkey. They want people like me and people like Milo denying accusations of, you know, whatever insane thought crime they want to address us with. Someone says, it's helped Peterson quite a lot. Of course, because Jordan Peterson is one of them. You have to understand, Jordan Peterson is on their side, and they know it. And so all that stuff, you know, all that stuff about how he bravely stood up to SJWs and all this sort of thing, it's bogus. Totally bogus. So the somebody said Peterson and Sam Harris play by the media's rules. They don't just play by the media's rules. The media loves them. The media has twice gone out of its way to anoint Sam Harris as a officially approved intellectual. Remember they had the whole, Wired did its whole piece on the new atheists, and then the New York Times did its piece on the intellectual dark web. They even had the same type of photographer taking the same type of pictures. You know, the media is desperate to make Sam Harris and Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson relevant. They are supposed to be the approved opposition, because the media wants you listening to people like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, these nobodies, the Weinsteins or whoever, Sam Harris. If you're not listening directly to the Charles Blows and the people that they put, the Brett Stephens, the people that they put on their own opinion page, then they want you listening to the approved opposition. They want you listening to the intellectual dark web. What they do not want you to do is they do not want you listening to Milo. They don't want you listening to Stefan Molyneux. They don't want you listening to Mike Cernovich. And they definitely don't want you listening to, you know, Q and reading the Chans and all that sort of thing. That's what, you know, all you need to know is, what do they talk about in a positive light, in an approving light, and what do they talk about in a way that makes it very clear that you should never ever pollute your eyes or soil your ears by paying attention to. Here's a good question. What's the difference between approved opposition and controlled opposition? Approved opposition is when they don't mind you listening to them, even though it's not what they necessarily agree with. So, you know, the SJWs at the New York Times do not agree with Ben Shapiro on a lot of stuff. They don't agree with Jordan Peterson on a lot of stuff. But they also realize that what those guys are doing is harmless to their case. You know, if you listen to Shapiro, think about it. If you listen to Ben Shapiro, are you going to vote for Trump? No. You know, if you listen to Jordan Peterson, is there anything controversial that you are likely to embrace? No, not at all. You know, Peterson doesn't question anything. And so, so you have to take a look at, and then a controlled opposition is somebody who is actually directly on their side working for them, doing what they want, like Jennifer Rubin. Jennifer Rubin is absolutely controlled opposition. She was a left-wing Hollywood lawyer before she suddenly magically became a important Republican opinion columnist and a conservative thought leader. That is totally controlled opposition. So Jennifer Rubin, Bill Kristol, those type of guys, they're controlled opposition. Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, etc., I would consider them to be more approved opposition. I'm not sure about Shapiro. Actually, he could fit into either category. I personally think that he would be controlled opposition if they wanted him to, but I don't think they need to. Let's see. Many accuse Alex Jones of being controlled opposition. I've heard those accusations, but I don't see any. I've never seen any signs of it myself. So, don't listen to Jews and Jew sympathizers. Well, I would strongly recommend that you listen to the Jew named Martin Van Creveld. If you don't, you're not going to be able to make heads or tails of what's going on with regards to the world of warfare. I think you always need to pay some attention to people who are speaking the truth, regardless of what their heritage might be. Let's see. Let's see here. I like Dave Rubin, though. Well, they're supposed to be likable. That's what you're supposed to be. Hey Vox, is Jones a Zionist shill or no? People on the alt-right say that a lot. People on what I refer to as the alt-retard call literally everyone, including me, a Zionist shill. So I don't really pay any attention. I don't pay any attention whatsoever to what those guys say. So anyhow, let's see here. Let's see. Is controlled op Bannon? I wouldn't think so. He certainly hasn't seemed to benefit too much from his his accomplishments and stuff so far. I mean, in general, there's a basic rule of thumb. Okay, if the media is falling all over themselves to talk to you, and if they always if they always have time to quote you, and they give you lots of positive press and that sort of thing, then you're one of them. That's the way it works. I can't tell you how many times I've been interviewed by the New York Times, by various major news organizations. We want to learn more about the alt-right. And so I do an interview with them, and not a damn thing. Nothing. Because none of my answers fit the narrative. And that's why I realized, at first I realized it was pointless. Then I realized that there's absolutely no way that it makes any sense to support them by giving them content. There's literally there's literally thousands of posts on my blog. I've written 16 or 17 books, not counting the comic books. There are literally hundreds of thousands of words that they can cite, they can refer to if they want to know what I think. And yet, they don't want to do that. That's not enough for them. They need that comment. They need that kill quote. That's how they work. So deny it to them. Don't get clever. Don't get cute. Don't think that you're going to troll them. Don't even respond. I mean, here's the lesson of Milo, to bring it back to what we're talking about. You know, Milo was attacked in the international media, and they lied. They claimed that he wanted to, they claimed that he was calling for people to gun down journalists. That's totally false. He never made any public call at all. He responded to requests from 2 journalists who wanted to interview him and wanted to get comments from him. He responded to them and said that, you know, he would just assume that people hunted down journalists. And they claimed falsely that this was something that he was doing. And it's not true. So you cannot even respond to them to tell them that you're not going to talk to them. They will try to use that. Let's answer some more questions here. Okay, I have a hard time getting people to disregard Shapiro at my church, unfortunately. Yeah, then you might need to find a better church because they're probably pretty unsound on Christian doctrine as well. Let's see. Is white genocide real or just bad rhetoric? I think genocide is not really the right term. I think that the European nations and white Americans are definitely under attack, but it is terrible rhetoric. It's always been bad rhetoric. Would you go on Joe Rogan? I don't know. I would have said yes a year ago, but after seeing the way that Rogan was dishonestly defending George Soros, I have my doubts about him. After ABC talked to Paul Elam, they realized he wasn't crazy, so they shut down their hit piece on him. Yeah, they probably realized that it was just so completely out of whack they weren't going to be able to sell it. So, Shapiro is strong in some points. That's how he lures you in. Then he promotes globalist wars. Well, that's his whole gig. That's what he's literally been doing that for years. You know, it's kind of funny. People talk to me about how I'm only attacking Shapiro because I'm jealous of him. I always say, yeah, why don't you go back and read my columns from 2006 when I named him the littlest chicken hawk? You know, I'm very, very consistent about this. You know, Shapiro has always been a coward. He's always been a hypocrite. You know, it's just ridiculous. I mean, the fact that anyone takes him seriously is I would like to be able to say that it is bewildering or surprising to me, but it's not. You know, most people are idiots, and the fact that, you know, people actually take people like him and Jordan Peterson seriously tends to prove it. Let's see here. I'm the last white man at my church. Do I leave town? Well, you probably will sooner or later. Let's see here. What's a good thing to look for in a church? Do they take the Bible seriously? You know, do they have all male deacons, or do they have a female teaching pastor? You know, that's a pretty good one. I just can't bring myself to care about Milo, but media are, well, the point is not Milo. You know, whether you love Milo or whether you detest Milo, the point is the way that he was treated in the media, despite being much quicker on his feet and much smarter than the average person, is a very, very good reason to not put yourself in the same position. Were all nations that exist today created by God, or is it possible for new nations to emerge through racial mixing? I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. Hey Vox, do you think the alt-right is being funded by corporate lefties and Soros? Totally depends what you mean by the alt-right. I'm not being funded by corporate lefties or Soros. I've just heard of QAnon. Where do I catch up on that? I think if you look up qanon.pub, that's a good place. Let's see. Shapiro exposed himself as a gatekeeper over Candace Owens. It's not the first time. Let's see. No, Jordan Peterson is not the second coming of Carl Jung. Jordan Peterson doesn't even understand Carl Jung. What are some good responses we can make to the recent Maryland newspaper shooting? Well, the best one is, so what? Or I like words have consequences. I have no sympathy. I mean, they humiliated a nut job. The nut job, targeted them in response. None of it should have happened, but it did. Let's see. Living in Southern California, yes, absolutely you should get out. California is a disaster, and it's just going to get worse. Did you hear rumors that the Pope was arrested last week for complicity with child abuse? No, I did not hear that. That strikes me as being unlikely, but about it actually happening, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he was complicit in some way. Let's see. Have you ever heard or seen of the alt-right groups called Patriot Front and this, that, and the other thing? No, I don't pay any attention to that kind of stuff. Let's see. How would you respond to people who argue that the West is merely on an upward cusp and that we don't fundamentally have a better culture and that cultures have ups and downs? That's ridiculous. The West is on a very rapid downward spiral. What can be done to counter this rewriting of the history and the Founding Fathers? Support those who speak the truth. Refuse to support those who don't. Let's see. Yeah, somebody said words have consequences, throw their own slogans back at them. That was an extremely effective tactic for Gamergate. Extremely effective. Always use their words whenever you can. What do you think of Pastor Stephen Anderson? I don't, because I've never heard of him. What is your view on the Catholic Church's teaching on contraception? I don't have one. I'm not a Catholic. It's not my custom to concern myself much with the doctrines of organizations I don't belong to. How's my soccer game at the moment? On hiatus, because since our season is done. We actually just had our annual meeting, which, much to my son and I, much to our amusement, it always ends in singing the club anthem. My wife is like, wait, what? You have an anthem? So, let's see. Can you expand on what you mean that Jordan Peterson doesn't understand Jung? We do not have anywhere close to that kind of time, so no, but read a summary of Jung and then read Maps of Meaning, and you will rapidly be convinced that the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. What's the best way to red pill your friend quickly and efficiently? I don't know. There's lots of ways that reality intrudes. I guess I would say one of the best ways is, go and socialize in a environment where you are the absolute minority. And what you will find is that you are expected to behave the way according to their standards. One of the biggest problems that white Americans have is that they think everyone is white American inside. It's just not the case. The next Voxiversity will be in about 10 days. Would I talk to Jay Dyer, and what are your views of orthodoxy? I don't know who Jay Dyer is. Are you still following Rollo and Dalrock? Yes, I still read both of them. I'm just not writing Alpha Game anymore. Does economic growth necessarily impact birth rate negatively? Usually it's the other way around. Usually economic growth goes along with increasing birth rates. But of course the use of contraception and stuff appears to have changed that somewhat, potentially. Charles Murray says that we are just a few years away from geneticists showing the public race and IQ differences. Well, I think they've already proven it. I mean, we're already there. It's just that doesn't do you much good when you're dealing with a low IQ population that can't understand the situation, can't understand the rationale. Who's your favorite for winning the World Cup? I said before it started that Spain would win, and I'm still standing by that. I'm a monthly contributor to Voxiversity. Thank you very much. Not checked if it's still being taken. It should be within a week. I don't think it has been yet this month, but I believe they'll have the system up and running again within a week. I'll address that with the Voxiversity folks directly on a brainstorm. Quite the undertaking, but I will finish maps. I bet you won't. It's neither fun nor entertaining nor easy reading. Let's see. What's the best book on economics for a newbie to read? I would probably say Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. It's outdated, it's wrong on free trade, but it's a great starting point. What's your opinions of all Christians consolidating to one church to save the West? That's a disaster. Ecumenicism is a globalist program, so that's a disastrous problem. What do you think of Jared Taylor from American Renaissance? I think that he generally has positive objectives. I think he's pretty smart, but I don't pay much attention to the whole white American nationalism thing. It's just not applicable to the rest of the West. Belgium or Croatia? I'd rather see Croatia win, but Belgium looks like the better team to me. Let's see here. Peterson couldn't handle Dyer. Of course he couldn't handle Dyer. Peterson couldn't even handle Sam Harris. I mean, you have to understand, Peterson can't debate. He's terrible. Let's see. Why is paganism growing, and why are they generally speaking more red-pilled than people who have real religions? The reason that paganism is growing is that paganism is a form of atheism for people who understand the importance of the spiritual element. And so, there are people who can't accept Christianity for one reason or another, but they understand that they have a need for a spiritual element in their lives, and so they're inventing it. But you have to understand that paganism today it's about as serious as Dungeons and Dragons. It's total live action role playing. There are no pagans who actually believe in the gods that they quote unquote worship. Let's see. Do you think the upcoming Mexican election will change anything between U.S. and Mexico? Yes. A lot of people don't realize that the Mexicans are very, very socialist. 2 of their 3 parties actually belong to the Socialist International. Let's see. Will white nationalism devolve into proper ethnic nationalism once the U.S. wakes up? No, because there are no proper nations in the USA anymore. I don't know who Dan Carlin is. Do you think Italy will break up as a country in our lifetime? I believe that Venice will be sovereign again. I believe that La Serenissima will come back again. Is Christianity dead in Europe? No, not even close. I repeat, all we need is 12. Do you view churchianity as being at fault for the rise in paganism? Absolutely. If I were given the choice between churchianity and paganism, I would be right in there with the sons of Odin, or worshiping Crow the trickster, or something like that, as well. Churchianity is false. Churchianity is evil, and it should never, ever be confused with Christianity. Look, this is not that hard. You look at what the Churchians are doing, and you can see that it has nothing to do with the 2,000 years of genuine Christianity. So I totally salute and understand the pagans who totally reject Churchianity. I reject it too. But understand, just because they call it Christianity doesn't mean that it is, any more than the fact that Mitt Romney calls himself a Republican. He actually believes in a Republican system of government. Which version of the Bible do you read? I guess it depends which language. In English, I usually read the New International Version just because that's what I happen to have. I'm not one of those, I'm not terribly focused on, this is the one true version that you must read. Mostly because when you speak multiple languages, you understand how silly the concept of absolute precision in translation is. Do you believe white Americans will eventually awaken and unify, especially on racial grounds? To an extent, to a certain extent. Thoughts on Sata vacantism? I'm not Catholic, so I'm not the right person to ask about that. I am not a fan of the current Pope, and let's just put it that way. Should we give up on capitalism and market worship? Yes. Capitalism is good. The market is good, but they are not supreme. Why can't the blacks seem to behave properly? Lower average IQ and shorter time preferences. This is not a surprise. If you consider, I've pointed this out. I call it the time to civilization. If you look at the way the Germans used to behave when Caesar wrote about them, their behavior is very different than it is today. And so it took 1,000 years and a lot of Germans being killed and a lot of exposure to civilization for them to change their behavior. Blacks have only been interacting with civilization for about 400 years. They have not had the time to adapt to the different standards. Are you going to go on Stefan's show again? Certainly, if I'm invited. I haven't been invited to go on. I will be going on Alex Jones again soon, though. That I can pretty much guarantee you. If white genocide is bad rhetoric, what is good rhetoric? I'll have to think about that. But is the black community behavior down to influence? No, it's not. I mean, you guys, some of you who are Americans or Europeans need to understand that, Africans have their own culture. They have their own perspective, and they've had it for a long, long time. All right? They don't behave the way that they do because white people make them. They don't behave the way they do because Jews taught them to behave that way. A lot of the behaviors of the African communities in the United States and in Europe is directly related to the way that they behave in Africa. Okay? It's a different culture, different society, different behavioral patterns. Deal with it. Let's see here. I'm going to do 3 10-minute. Okay. Let's see. I guess it's pretty much. Yeah. Okay. Well, can you make more videos where you expand your views on free trade? Certainly. And if you're interested in an expanded view on free trade, I strongly suggest that you go to my blog and click on free trade. I actually identify all 17 problems with Henry Hazlitt's argument for free trade in detail. I don't think it would make much of a video, but let's see. Could pagan gods, Odin, Zeus, etc., be early versions of superheroes mapping out male role models? That's possible. Let's see here. Thanks very much for your lessons in Pearl Hero. You're welcome. And let's see. If you go on Stefan's show, will you please give him your legitimate take on Jordan Peterson? And I will if that's what he wants to talk about. I don't know what book somebody's waiting for. Oh, the free trade book. Yeah. People are waiting for a lot of books these days, it seems. Oh, speaking of what's the real average IQ of Ashkenazi Jews? Probably around 103, somewhere between 103 and 105. Are white Americans getting dumber? Yes. I should also mention this. For those of you who are interested in what we're doing with comics, these are all our print comics now. Actually, it's not all of them, but it's 5 of the 8. And if you notice, right on second from the left, Quantum Mortis number 2 is now out and available in print. All of them are available for $2.99 full color. And if you want to support what we're doing in the culture war, I would highly recommend that you stop by and check a few of these out, pick them up. So anyhow, that's all for tonight. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good evening.